We were holding. We did everything we could. We tried everything we could. We did our duty. This is what they will say of us. That is what they will know. That we fought and we tried. We did our duty. But none can understand what we are up against. None can know the horrors that lurk in the darkness of the void. And every last one of them wants to either wipe us out, consume us, or dominate us. It is not a nice galaxy. And right now, I have no idea how the Ultramarines did it, or the Blood Angels, or any of the Emperor's Angels of Death, the Astartes. How did they beat these monsters? Because every time we think we have them on the run, every time we think they simply cannot take any more, simply cannot have any more armies to throw at us, up and on comes another. And every single time they attack in a different way, more subtle or cunning way, avenues we have never considered, alleys we may have missed, places we thought unassailable. So, here I am. One of the last of my entire battle group, the 2,334th Landragor Rifles. We've been pushed back from the defences again and again. What was once a massive fortification that was touted to be even more impregnable than even fabled Vrax. Now, we are pushed back to the last lines, the last defences. Huge walls with shielding, massive guns that tear rents into the earth when we fire them. Everything within meters of the blasts are burnt to a crisp or simply evaporated. Yet still they come on. We must have smashed hundreds of thousands of them, perhaps millions. Yet on they come. But at the present there seems to be no point to it. We know that they are not mere animals, as I said. They are cunning and directed. There is definitely something far smarter than I am behind these tsunamis of flesh that crash against us again and again. Yet they are barely making it to the middle of what people are now calling no man's land. The areas between the final walls and the preceding outer defences. No man's land, as it is clearly theirs. We can hear them chittering and scratching and eating in the night. We know they are taking our dead, our brothers and sisters, all of humanity that stayed and stood and lost their lives in defiance of these things. They are taking our dead and eating them, making more of their own number. It is the only way this is possible. So many of them. And the thought makes us all want to vomit. There was talk of sorties into the dark to prevent them from gaining our dead. Such rage had been invoked by the thought of their perfidy, their using our own against us, the dishonour of their memory. But the commissars put a stop to that when the second sorties did not return. We heard them all, screaming in the night, dying to a man. We had fed our enemies more flesh, more material. So the commissars, who were usually so full of wrath and zeal, even they said it was a waste of fighting men, that we needed to reserve every ounce of our strength for the defence of our walls. And so we did. The prayers to the Emperor seemed to be getting more desperate with each hour, the sermons more fiery, yet there seems to be a despair even amongst the clerics. I think they know nobody is coming to save us, that we are doomed. For their sermons now surround sacrifice and everlasting glory at the side of the Emperor, meaning that they know we are already dead. Now it's just a matter of how long we can hold out. If we can hold out long enough, make the bugs pay for every inch of ground, every second, then maybe our sacrifice will allow other planets to be saved, that we fight, so the Imperium can muster its forces in defence. Cold comfort, if I am honest. But it's something. As dawn breaks across the horizon, the golden light of our star warms my face as I look down. I stand on the battlements, taking the last pleasure I have in the world, watching the bugs burn. They cannot get past our last batteries. I see larger and larger beasts arrive. None mattered against the burning lances we fire down. Nothing. And for a second, I begin to believe again. Pity. For that is when it happens. I hear a rumble from below, which means that it must be almost deafening down on the ground. The very battlements and crenellations of the last skirting walls are shuddering, so large is the disruption. I skid from watching the outside to the far wall and look down on our courtyard and open ground, where our men muster before the last walls, when the walls were to be breached. Mostly made up of assault units, our last reserves, our last formations. And panic is loosed amongst them when the rumbling reaches its crescendo, and finally the cause is made horrifically clear. Across the entire inner area, large holes begin to fall in, and out of them crash a cornucopia of Tyranid bioforms. Huge things with heads and jaws so large they could probably swallow an ogre in whole, if not a Lehman Russ tank. Hundreds of their many-armed killers, the ones that move in packs, and their claws rip through armour and sinew like it was paper. And the butchery begins. Assault platoons, though they are, armed with flamers and melters and ready for a scrap. They are no match for the ferocity of the fray, the confusion that is rife. And they keep coming. Their gaunts, the smaller ones, coming out behind the many-armed killers and filling the area with their horrible bullet bugs, the ones that bore into you and eat you from the insides out. I look down and want to weep. Our guns all point outwards. We could not fire them down in the courtyards even if we wanted to. They do not swivel 180 degrees, you see. So all we can do is watch. I see a knot or two of resistance standing proud. Many have commissars at their centre. Others have the weird Venom Primera Psykers at their core. The Psykers making short work of the Nids as they swarm at them. It is then that I see the end of all things. Doom made flesh. For out of the holes now hover packs of nightmarish things, all head and no body. They float like they are magical. And before them everyone runs. I see a commissar break down and weep while his unit scatters away from these things. A commissar weeping. Only one thing can explain this. The warp. They sail our men everywhere, terrorising them, breaking them. Where there are Psykers of our own, the units do not break, but they still die. These things, these brain balloons, simply all fire lances of power beams of psychic energy that burn our men in exactly the same way that our macro lasers burn through theirs. Like lines of power that can cut and burn everything in front of them. They hone in on the last centres of resistance and burn everything and everyone. It is over. I can see them. Various types gaining entrance to the bottoms of the walls. They're entering. They're coming. I look down the line at each and every man and woman in uniform with eyes wide and jaws dropped. I look to a box of grenades and take it. I run across the walkway towards the entrance to our section, the winding stairs that will be their entry point. Everyone is just watching, stunned. But then I realise they are affected too. These things are sending waves of horror and fear up at us, paralysing us. But not me. I will do all I can. I am resigned, you see. I will buy my squad time, but will die. So they cannot scare me. Not from this distance. I pelt down the stairs as fast as my legs would carry me, holding the box of grenades. Frag. Nice. This should do it. I reach a choke point, a small landing with murder holes all around its outsides. I then wait for them. As the first one of them dives into the room, they see a small, squishy human. A meal. But they probably do not clock the things in my hands or mouth, the ticking sounds. I will not be a meal. Nor will they use this entry point. My squad will last a few more minutes, maybe an hour if they can hold. And that is one more hour for our forces across a million worlds of the Imperium to get off their backsides and do something. I grin around the grenade as I pull out all 3 pins, dropping one into the crate. Ha! For the Emperor. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and war gear of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to continue our look into some of the most threatening of the bioweapons of the Tyranid Hive fleets. For every single organism blurted from the wombs of the Norn Queens before an invasion is only that, a biological weapon. They have no agency, no clear thought. They are animals, weapons, that are directed by the relentless hunger of the hive mind. As we have seen recently, the Tyranids are evolving with each planet they consume, each scrap of genetic material they collect, every species they defeat, absorbing those traits that will make even more powerful or specific weapons, like the Zoanthrope. Now, we recently discussed the Tyrant Guard, who are clearly and confirmed to be an aberration developed upon the absorption of the gene seed and black carapace of the Astartes, the Space Marine. But the Zoanthrope is the warrior beast produced by absorbing the genetic and powerful abilities of the Eldari. They are Psykers. But they do not work in exactly the same way as standard Psykers of any other race to which I am privy. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote: Zoanthropes, Tyrannicus animus aberrans, are perhaps the strangest and most bizarre of the Tyranids' myriad breeds. They are powerful Psykers, apparently engineered from harvested Eldari DNA to form living conduits for the focused power of the Tyranid hive mind. So extreme is their development that their atrophied bodies and bulbous heads are entirely energized by psychic force. They can shoot an extremely powerful warp blast and rival the Eldari in their psychic prowess. They can move only by psychically levitating themselves, drifting across the battlefield to rain bolts of incandescent psychic power on the enemy, or relay the Synapse commands of the hive mind to its lesser breeds. The Zoanthropes are without a doubt one of the most effective psychic creatures amongst the Tyranids. Their primary means of defense is a warp blast psychic power that can even kill the mighty Space Marines. Zoanthropes are a potent addition to a swarm of smaller Tyranid breeds, as they have extended synaptic control and provide hard-hitting ranged psychic attacks. Despite their power, however, Zoanthropes sometimes seem to be victims of their own massive energy reserves, and there have been numerous after-action reports of Zoanthropes psychically burning out in battle. After hurling numerous psychic bolts or sustaining their shields for an extended period, their craniums have been observed to burst and bleed out, sending them crashing limply to the ground. Imperial Psykers who have witnessed these events liken it to the perils of the warp, which normal Psykers can suffer when psychic energy overloads their minds. In addition to their ability to hurl powerful bolts of warp energy at their foes, Zoanthropes are also very difficult to destroy, especially considering how weak and feeble their actual bodies are. This resilience stems from their ability to create a powerful bubble of warp energy around themselves, shielding them from all kinds of weapons and even turning aside physical blows in close combat, much like naturally generated void shields. Like their ability to drift above the battle by extending a bubble of warp energy around themselves, the psychic shield seems to be constantly regenerated by the Zoanthrope and is always present as long as the creature lives. It has been noted that the shield seems to strengthen or coalesce around particularly powerful attacks, flashing bright for an instant to turn aside the blow before fading back to a uniform shimmer around the alien Psyker. Neurothrope. Neurothropes are further evolved versions of the standard Zoanthrope. These alpha beasts have the ability to leech the very life force from their foes to power their attacks. There are some who believe the Neurothrope strain to be the progeny of the Doom of Malantai, which is a truly horrifying concept for all sentient races. Neurothropes can also use their parasitic power to heal nearby Zoanthropes, which helps to safeguard against the overload of psychic energy that commonly overwhelms these creatures. A combined host of these psychic bioforms is a formidable threat indeed. End quote. So, Zoanthropes are the result of the Hive's gaining Eldari genes. Those mighty Psykers who are far more powerful than any but the most rare of talents amongst the other races. But they do not directly access the warp to power their mystic attacks and curses. They draw upon the collective might of the Hives. Strange and incongruous with how we know that the warp and Psyker powers usually manifest. I am reminded of my natural cogitation over the nature of the holy abilities of the Sisters of Battle, and other seemingly Psyker phenomenon that are charged by the power of faith instead. Does this mean that the holy warriors and priests of the Imperium are working on the collected resonance of that faith, being not directly connected to the warp? Or have GW just made a hash of their own internal mechanics when dealing with psychic phenomena? At this point, I am not sure if I have missed something, hidden somewhere in a text I am not aware of, or if they have been blasé and decided, sounds good, let's run with it. Despite how it contravenes nearly everything in their own fantasy world, as defined by their existing canon and metaphysics. But at the end of the day, it works. And it is fun. So sometimes the confusion of one bald dude sitting in a room and talking to himself with a microphone open does not really amount to a great issue. Perhaps in the future we will gain the quintessence of the matter, but for the moment I almost feel that the illogical use of the Zoanthropes' abilities, using psychic abilities without harnessing the warp, is what makes them special. It is what we don't know about the Tyranids that makes them exciting. But like the Tyranid Guard, the Zoanthropes should send a shiver down the spine of anyone in the grim darkness of the far future who hears of them. For surely they spell the death knell of the entire galaxy. For who can defeat a limitless army that can absorb the best of their opponents and actually get stronger with each and every battle they fight? And should they gain their wish and conquer Baal, the Rock, or Imperial Terror, and gain the genetic material of a Primarch or even the Emperor himself? Terrifying. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to the Neurothrope and Zoanthrope. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.